This is the Nightshade Cult, a podcast macabre.
We bid you welcome. Enter freely and of your own will.
I'm Nick Graham.
And I'm David Graves.
We will be your horror hosts for this dissection of John Carpenter's seminal 1978 slasher film, Halloween.
Good evening.
So you were saying as we came down here into the Vault of Darkness, you'd never seen this.
No, I've never seen it.
I've never seen it.
This movie's older than me, and it is a classic.
Yeah, and you know, it's October. This is our October 15th episode, so that's the one preceding the holiday of Halloween, and it seemed like this was the time to finally watch the father of the slasher genre. It's not technically maybe the very first, but it is the first. It's the first true slasher with all of the tropes of the genre established.
Yeah, I've read some debates back and forth on that, and there are some movies that had slasher-ish or slasher-adjacent things, but this one has all of the tropes. It combines all these tropes together and creates the formula that all the other movies go with. So
yeah, from here on out, you have the virginal final girl, you have the horror in the suburbs, or
masked killer, teenage victims.
Yeah, it was almost there with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which predates this just a little bit. But this is really like, it crystallizes with this movie.
Yeah, when I watched this, I was thinking about this movie, obviously, in prep for this, and I was thinking, I love Halloween. I always have. I love the holiday, and I like all things spooky. But notably, I'm not a fan of, like, proper scary horror movies. I never have been. I've never really been, and I know, I'm sorry, Cultists, you probably are thinking, okay, turn it off. No, it's just that I like gothic horror and existential dread, and I like thinking horror rather than jump scare, slasher, blood, screams, and I just never have. Ever since I was, a young kid, like watched my very first slasher movie or whatever on HBO or Cinemax or whatever, and it just never spoke to me. And so ever since, I've always just sort of avoided anything that is even remotely gruesome horror, I guess.
Yeah. And interestingly, though, this isn't a gruesome movie.
No, it's not. And now that I've watched it, I'm sad that I waited so long because it was not very gruesome. No. It was a lot of it was theater of the mind violence.
Yeah, exactly.
And so this actually is a suspense movie, first and foremost, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's it's my understanding that is similar in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That there's a lot of implied, gruesome violence, but you actually don't see it that much.
Yeah, it's
like you're not actually watching him chop up people with a chainsaw.
It's like the earliest werewolf movies where the transformations are mostly off screen.
Yeah, exactly.
So just sort of note for this movie, it was made on a pretty shoestring budget, $325,000. And then it made in the box office $70 million, and I was thinking to myself, well, that's a huge multiplication. But what would that be in 2024 dollars? So I just open the old AI tab and asked it to crunch some numbers for me, and adjusted for inflation, this would have been a $1.3 million movie. So still a shoestring budget for a major production, and it would have grossed $326 million.
So very profitable.
So hella profitable.
Yeah. So you were saying, this was probably the oldest movie we've covered. It was at the time the most profitable independent film. Yeah. Which I think Mad Max, which we've covered in the past, was eclipsed it then.
And then didn't Reservoir Dogs eclipse that?
Yeah, much later.
Yeah, much later. Yeah. I was just thinking, who holds the current title?
Mad Max held it for a good long while. But it's interesting. We've been kind of getting into these early foundational
classic
movies. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, like, Mad Max is more violent. Reservoir Dogs is way more violent than this movie. Yeah. And I love those movies.
Yeah.
So I guess I just had this weird block in my head that if it's a scream horror or a slasher horror, it wasn't for me. I this movie changed my mind on that.
Interesting, yeah. We definitely, there's sort of a slasher Mount Rushmore with Leatherface and Michael Myers and Jason and Freddy.
Yeah.
So now we've got Michael Myers down. We do need to hit
the
other big
ones.
three.
It's pretty important. I mean, for us, we're more like a monster movie guys, but this is still important.
The slasher killers have over the years have moved into that category with the Universal monsters, kind of like if you go to any horror convention, there's going to be action figures and t-shirts of these guys.
And Michael Myers is like sort of supernatural in this movie. It's debatable.
Yeah, there definitely seems something inhuman about him. They explain it, I guess, in the later movie. There's like a cult of druids, and there's a lot of stuff.
So definitely supernatural.
Yeah, but none of that is present in this movie.
Well, it's meant to make you wonder and think. Like, so it's an interesting...
Yeah. Why can you plug 6 bullets in the guy and he falls out a window and just gets up and runs away?
Yeah, and he like lands and it looks like he didn't land well. Because most people, if you fall out an upper story window, you're hurt. You're not getting up and leaving. And so, he got out of there. And that's the Birds ending. That's a Hitchcock thing. Like the villain gets away. There's no resolution here. The final girl survives, but the villain is at large.
Yeah. And it's so and it ends really abruptly, which I guess that's something that's a signature of John Carpenter. It's just sort of like,
that's it.
Yeah, we're done. No more story. Movie over.
I low-key loved that ending.
Yeah.
Because I am the guy who complains about things dragging. That didn't drag.
Yeah.
It just got done.
Right. Oh, it's true.
So, I mean, I think you can probably tell I liked the movie, but I still have a lot to say about it.
Sure.
And I think that's this is kind of turning over a new leaf. I think we definitely need to hit some of these classic horrors, and then maybe even later on, maybe next Halloween, we hit up the 2018 remake, and then maybe
it's a sequel.
It's a sequel. Oh yeah. It's not a and then there's a sequel to that one. Yeah. What, Final Halloween or Halloween Ends?
It's Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, and it's David Gordon Green who directed Pineapple Express, and those movies are co-written by him and Danny McBride.
Okay.
And at least Halloween 2018 is very well regarded, so I'm super curious about those movies too.
It seems worth doing, and I think it's probably worth savoring and waiting for Halloween to do Halloween.
Make this an
movies.
October tradition.
Yeah, we just do Halloween movies in Halloween.
That seems logical.
Yeah, seems very doable.
Seems very logical. Well, let's roll the music and we'll get into the dissection. On the 15th anniversary of the night he murdered his sister as a child, a killer escapes his mental institution to return home and kill again.
It's that simple. My synopsis was, girl shoos away unwanted house guest.
That's accurate also.
Honestly, the only thing I found slightly unbelievable about the movie was the prologue part where he kills his sister, because... like, literally, you can hold a kid that size away from you with one arm.
Yeah,
and she's kind of grown, like, obviously. Yeah,
and I suppose you don't imagine your 6-year-old brother is going to stab you. Even if he has a knife, you think it's just he's playing around and being inappropriate, and then he's got a kitchen knife stuck in your chest.
Yeah, and I think it's arguable that a child that size could kill you with one stab.
Yeah, no, probably not. I think it's harder than people imagine to stab someone.
Yeah.
But we are talking Michael Myers has weird
magic.
He has weird druid powers or something.
Magic man.
Yeah.
So as far as the storytelling goes, this plot is almost as simple as it gets.
Yeah.
It's just we pick up after that, as George Martin would call it, the Ice Monster prologue.
Right.
You get a taste of the villain, and then we get some everyday life. and really, it's just some high school stuff. This reminds me of an anime.
Yeah, it is a very slice of life anime for sure, with the high school girls
and the babysitting and all this stuff. It's like I've watched this anime before. I know exactly what this is. Obviously, those guys have seen Halloween.
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. It's because I've been going in on all these. Basically, every horror podcast that I follow has an episode on this movie. So
you kind of should.
I've listened to tons and tons of podcasts, and everyone talks about how it's really hard in the 2020s to see this and not think, oh, I've seen this before. In 1978, you had not. You know what I mean? In 1978, none of these tropes were as established as they are at this point, where I was just kind of taken aback how many familiar scenes were in this movie, where I'd be like, I've seen this exact shot in a bunch of movies, and I didn't know this is where it came from.
Like the sheet over the head with the sunglasses. Like, I swear I've seen that shot before in other things.
Yeah, and him standing by the car when she looks out the classroom window. I've seen that referenced a ton, and it's just like, it's one of those things. It's just like when you find, like that Blue Cheer album that's kind of before Black Sabbath, and you're like, oh, okay, this is another building block to that sound.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I first listened to Hawkwind.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah, a lot comes from this.
Yeah. If you haven't listened to Hawkwind, Cultists, you should. It's worth checking out.
Silver Machine. Oh, that's so good. So
classic.
Good.
So, yeah, I just wanted to comment on this minimalist narrative. It's absolutely spare. And sometimes I have been quoted as saying it's lazy storytelling.
Yeah.
But in this case, it feels like providing less contributes to the suspense, and it actually less is more in this case. It's not always. Sometimes less is just less.
Yeah.
Sometimes a storyless movie is just boring.
Right.
But in this case, the story is the story of Laurie, Jamie Lee Curtis's character,
right,
and all of the stuff surrounding her. So I thought it was pretty well done.
Yeah, when there isn't a ton of exposition. I mean, Dr. Loomis does all the exposition.
Yeah.
But even his exposition is like lacking detail. He's like, I looked at this 6-year-old boy and he had the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. And it's like not stuff normally a psychologist says. And
Dr. Loomis is the Van Helsing from this movie.
Yes, he is the Van Helsing. And that good point, because they had wanted to cast first Peter Cushing, which would have been very on point.
That would have been dope.
Yeah, and Christopher Lee, and couldn't get either of them.
Probably didn't have enough money.
Yeah,
it was made for. They probably would have wanted $300,000 just for themselves.
Exactly, but what's the guy's name? I'm blanking. Donald Pleasance. He is a veteran of horror movies as well.
Yeah, he does a good job.
He's just not quite a Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee level veteran of horror movies.
Imagine if they could have got Vincent Price. That would have been great, too.
That would have been great, too. Yeah, so the screenplay is by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. And they were dating at the time, and he wanted two things. He wanted his name above the title, so it's John Carpenter's Halloween.
Okay.
And he wanted her to have a producing credit on it. And it's really their joint baby. Like, they really wrote this together. She wrote all the dialogue for the girls, because John Carpenter just doesn't have an ear for teenage girl banter.
Did seem like real stuff. Like,
real girl talk.
Yeah, I'm exposed to that on the regular, and it sounded real.
Yeah, very just trashy teenage girl
talking about stupid shit,
making fun of each other, being dicks. Yeah, it's very realistic. Yeah, and all the while they're getting stalked by this creep.
Yeah, I really liked how there was good character development in that the characters didn't make a big journey, but they were all very believable. Like, Laurie was believable, her friends were believable, like the one whose dad was the sheriff or whatever. Like, all of these characters, they felt like real people, like definitely slice of life type things.
Yeah, and Jamie Lee Curtis, it helps that she was an actual teenager when they're doing this. The other girls are a bit older.
Yeah, I was noting that. I was talking with Carrie about that, and they look a little older. Like her friends look like they're like early 20s.
Yeah, I think PJ Souls was like 27.
Okay,
like, she's even in her late 20s, but still playing teens. That was very normal for a long time. People played teens until they're like 30.
Yeah, and I think that there's some good like themes that they explore in this movie, like things like childhood trauma and the nature of evil. I like how the doctor just describes how he's just got pure evil in him and he's basically irredeemable. Just that concept, if that is a real thing.
Well, and he said he was given this kid, as an assignment, basically, and has just gotten nothing out of him but a blank stare for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Like, whatever he saw in that child terrified him, and and it's left him sort of crazed. Like you said, like a Van Helsing. Like this, his life's work is this demonic man boy. I guess he'd be 20. He's 21, right? This is his. If he was 6, and he's been away for 15 years, he's 21 now.
Yeah, and he's got grown man strength, but also supernatural strength. He's like lifting people off the ground with one arm and stuff.
Yeah, and pulling a tombstone out of the ground is no small thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Even, a tombstone probably weighs like 240 or something like that. Yeah. But that's not easy to pick up when it's sunk into the ground.
In the earth. If you've ever tried to pull a fence post out, and that fence posts aren't that heavy. Yeah. It's hard to get out.
Yeah. And it's been sitting there for 15 years.
Yeah.
So it's just... what other themes? A lot of voyeurism. It's very... Carpenter puts the camera either from the POV of Michael Myers a lot of the time, or
like that.
Just over his shoulders, so you see his silhouette. And like he's not even called Michael Myers.
It's called The Shape.
The Shape, because you just see the shape of this nondescript man.
Yeah, he's never called Michael Myers in the movie. He's just The Shape.
Yeah, or the Boogeyman.
Yeah, the Boogeyman. And I think that the other thing that kind of, I guess you call it a theme, or maybe it's a directing method.
Yeah.
I love how this movie is like, it's like going fishing. It's like calm, and then an explosion of action and movement and something, and then it's back to calm again. Yeah. It's just like slow, fast.
Yeah. And totally. Yeah.
It's pretty good.
The beginning of the movie is so effective at building anxiety and just sort of dread, as she keeps seeing this guy, and it's Halloween. Like I was thinking, you think you're getting stalked by this guy, and it's clear he's following you. If you were to call the police, even when your bestie is the sheriff's daughter, there's nothing they could do. Like, you're like, it's a man in a mask. It's like, well, it's Halloween.
Yeah.
And I keep seeing him around. It's a small town. There's been no crime.
Yeah, someone's creeping because it's Halloween, and that's what you do on Halloween.
Yeah, and so you have this sense that something is wrong, but there's nothing you could do about it, and that just makes it even scarier.
Yeah, it's really suspenseful, and then when the boy starts seeing the boogeyman and nobody else sees him, it gets even more. It builds more tension and more suspense.
Yeah.
So I was thinking move into visuals.
Okay.
And I think that, as mentioned in kind of the intro, I love how they do, kind of off-camera violence.
Yeah.
This is, especially in the intro where you're looking through the eyes of the mask that he's wearing. So you can't actually see the body that he's stabbing until he's done and he steps back.
Yeah, you see her bloody body, but you never see the actual violence.
Yeah, I think that is... it's good storytelling. It's immersive.
Mm-hmm. And that's just a bonkers tracking shot that they do from outside the house and up in through the kitchen, up the stairs, into the bedroom. There's kind of like two hidden cuts, like where he puts on the mask, there's a cut there. And then I think another one, like when he opens the door, is another cut. But that's a very complicated shot. And I was listening to an interview with Jamie Lee Curtis, and she was talking about how they didn't have enough money for multiple lighting setups.
Okay.
So basically, as they're moving the camera through the house, people are tearing down one lighting setup to get out ahead of the camera and set up the next light. So when they get to the next space, it's lit for them. And just, when you don't have a lot of money, the crazy coordination and inventiveness you need to bring to it.
Yeah, it seems like, poverty is the mother of invention.
Oh, for sure. And that cinematography by Dean Cundy, who goes on to work, Carpenter uses him again and again after this.
Yeah.
They worked good together, and he's got a really interesting eye. And
yeah, I liked how they used a lot of low angle shots. There's a ton of shadows used.
Yeah.
So it's not just a dark look. It's not a fully dark looking movie. Like some movies, it's just too fucking dark. You can't see anything.
Yeah.
But in this case, there's just a lot of shadows. So there's areas of darkness in otherwise lit scenes.
Yeah, it's very natural lighting during the daytime.
Yeah.
But enough darkness for a boogeyman to lurk in.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I like how the lighting is generally low. It's not in your face. You don't ever really notice the lighting, which means they're doing their job, because it's not supposed to be stylized. Like this is not a Fight Club where lighting is hyper stylized.
Yeah, it's not expressionist totally. Let's talk about set decoration. Set decoration by Craig Stearns. They filmed this in March in Pasadena, so it's like the beginning of spring. Obviously, all the trees are green. There's a one bag of brown leaves that they painted that they blow with the fan, because you would see like brown leaves like blow across the street or whatever, and then they would have to gather them back up into the bag and save them for the next scene.
Jeez.
You can't get pumpkins in March. So they were buying other gourds
and
painting them orange. Yeah. And so there was some real innovative set decoration that goes on in this movie.
That's pretty crazy that they tried to film a fall movie in the spring.
Yeah. And Pasadena for somewhere in Illinois, it doesn't quite jive. There's palm trees.
Yeah, it definitely didn't. It definitely looked like somewhere nice.
Yeah, like I don't know why. I know obviously the script says it's in Illinois, but when you're not going to film there, just change it.
Why does it matter?
Just change the name. But it's still funny. It's funny to kind of portray the Midwest in the fall with Southern California in the spring.
Yeah. I was really interested when I was reading about this, how they originally got the mask for the shape, how it was a Captain Kirk mask,
right,
that they had altered and painted and everything. For some reason, I just love the fact that Michael Myers is Captain Kirk.
It is, and it's really funny, I guess, that they'd approached the Don Post mask company about, like product placement, like make us a mask for this movie, and they declined, and so it's like, okay, we'll just go to the dime store and buy some masks. And we'll
buy 10 of the same mask.
Yeah, and make it work. And they spray paint it white, and they spray paint the hair brown, and widen the eye holes a little bit.
Yeah, they widen them out just a little bit. Otherwise, it's pretty much just stock.
Yeah, and it's very effective because it's so generic looking, and the way he plays it is so like cold and emotionless. Yeah, you can project, and the eyes are just like pits. You almost never see his actual eyes through the mask. You just see the black holes, and it's just very unsettling.
Yeah, he played this really, really like motionless. He didn't he didn't move his head back and forth when he's watching people. He would just sit still. And it's pretty grim.
Yeah. Oh, it's very grim. And so I guess that probably falls under wardrobe, right?
Sure.
Wardrobe's by Beth Rogers.
Okay.
And again, I think people are just making do with like what you can get at the thrift store. And
these just look like regular clothes and some coveralls.
He just has some coveralls that he got off a tow truck guy he murdered along the way. And just everything is, probably, Jamie Lee Curtis said she had to go to JCPenney's and buy her own clothes. So
they just give her a little money. Go buy some clothes to wear.
Yeah.
That fit you.
Teen girl clothes. And she's like, well, I'm a teenage girl, so that'll be easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they looked really normal, natural. It wasn't like a weird stylized thing. Like what does a crazy Hollywood person think a regular Midwesterner wears? No, it's just regular old clothes.
That is funny when like teen clothes are just way off base, and it just kind of rubs you wrong when you're looking at it. You're like, no one dressed like this in 1978. But it all just looks very mundane and normal.
Yeah, I mean, most of those outfits you could see today. They're just they're super basic. And certain things just never go out of style. I mean, maybe you wouldn't see any of the corduroys. There's a couple cords in there, jackets and stuff, but not much.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, it's got a timeless quality to it. Yeah. We're just
moving right along.
We're ripping through this and even into audio.
Yeah, and I mean, I had no idea that John Carpenter scored this movie himself.
Oh yeah, he scores all his movies.
Because listening to it, I was like, wow, this is such simplistic keyboard music. This is just like very, very lo-fi, just simple, but it's good because it's so haunting and it's so memorable. He's playing these just very simple arpeggios on a synth and just sounds really eerie.
It's very unnerving, and he uses it essentially the same way Spielberg uses the Jaws theme. Like you hear it start playing and then you see the station wagon roll through, and it's just like whenever you hear that music, Michael Myers is coming.
Where did he learn how to drive?
There is like backstory to him learning how to drive, and there's kind of two different versions of it depending on where in the lore you get the explanation. I think it's fine to not actually know.
It doesn't really matter.
He either learned from watching Dr. Loomis in the asylum van, like when they would take them on excursions.
It's not that hard if it's an automatic.
Yeah, or someone at the hospital taught him to drive while he was a teenager. One or the other.
Either way is fine.
Yeah, either way it's fine. I like it when Loomis goes to the hospital the next morning and he's doing his big "I told you so" rant, and he's going to go back home and kill again, and but it's 100 miles away. He won't be able to get there, and he's like, he doesn't even know how to drive. He's like, he was doing a pretty good job last night. He's just Loomis is unhinged. I love it.
Yeah, he is very nonplussed about this.
So you brought up the score. I had the Halloween theme as my ringtone on my phone back when people used ringtones and not just vibrate.
Back when you used to pay for them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was one of the tracks that I bought for my phone for the ringtone. And talk about how unsettling that music is. It was very upsetting to people when my phone rang. Like I'd be standing in line at the grocery store or whatever, and my phone would go off. And people would jump and like clutch their chest and look around, and like when they figure out it's my phone, they're like, "Why would you have that for your ringtone?" And like it really affected people. Like to this day, people hear that song and it freaks them out.
Yeah, I mean, it's associated with ultraviolence. So what are you going to do?
You hear that, and Michael Myers is coming up behind you. Like that's what it means, and it made such an impact that 40 some odd years later, people still get the creeps when they hear that song.
Yeah, it's really cool, and the song it's just deceptively good. It's in minor key, it's just repetitive, and he chose like a really good pad, like synth pad. It's just a really, really cool thing. I was reading somewhere, and I don't know how true this is or whatever, but how they did some testing and market research where it had originally been scored with, kind of canned symphonic movie soundtrack music from the studio. And the movie was not considered scary enough by test audiences.
Right.
And supposedly John Carpenter wrote scored the whole movie over the course of 3 days.
Yeah.
He just played along to the scenes and wrote the score over the course of a few days, recorded it himself, and then arranged it.
Yeah, I heard a slightly different version of the same story, which was that they screened it without any music.
Okay.
And were told that the movie wasn't scary at all. And so that was when he did his score for it.
And
so
it's
either way, it's the same result. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen interviews with him where he talked about like it was just out of cost effectiveness that he started composing the music for his movies. He's like, if I write the music myself, then I don't have to pay a composer. And that's more of the budget that goes to making the movie. But
Sure.
I love his scores. Like, I think John Carpenter is like one of the best like film scorers or composers.
I mean, yeah, he's up there. It's a different vibe. It's not like Danny Elfman or
which that's orchestral. And Carpenters are always like spare and synthy and stuff he can play himself. But it's such a it's the style like Stranger Things has a Carpenter-esque score to it.
For sure.
Like, it's a style that you hear it and you're like, it's like this late 70s, early 80s creepy cyber horror vibe that I'm super into.
Yeah, I really like that sound and that style.
His father is a composer, so that's kind of where that comes from. Is he's got it. He comes from an artistic family.
Okay. That's cool. I mean, so I didn't write down who did the sound design for this movie, but I think it was done pretty darn well. Not only because they added in important things to add like the distant barking dogs, creaky floorboards when Michael Myers is walking through the house or whatever, but also the fact that they let silence reign.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that in a movie. I love it when they will just let a scene breathe. Yeah.
So supervising sound editor is William L. Stevenson, and the sound mixer is Thomas Causey. I will praise the sound editor, William Stevenson, and I'll curse Thomas Causey a little bit because I think the mixing is bad when it comes to the vocals. It's really hard to hear the people over the sound of the music and everything.
I'll agree. Sometimes the voices are too low in the mix, but I think I hope that was a stylistic intentional move.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, because it makes you turn it up louder. You know what I mean? You can't watch this movie quiet because you can't hear anything.
But honestly, I don't really think people said a lot of important stuff.
Maybe that's it. Maybe the dialogue is given the place in the mix that it is valued at.
Yeah, the music is more important than the dialogue in this movie.
It's true. It's more important for setting the atmosphere. I got frustrated at the beginning with how quiet the dialogue was, but by the later half of the movie, I could hear everything fine. Like your ears adjust to listening to it.
You were able to parse that noise. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that my favorite parts of the sound of this movie just had to be the John Carpenter keyboard parts, and then how silent it absolutely was. I love that the shape is silent.
Yeah, well, you hear him breathing in the mask, which is unsettling. Just that sort of heavy breathing, or occasionally like his straining grunts and stuff, but he never says anything. You just hear him just panting in the mask.
There's something even creepier about an unreasoning, violent killing machine. You can't make a deal with him. He doesn't have a wacky plan.
Yeah.
He's just a killer.
He's the proto Terminator,
Yeah.
which is obviously Terminator is a slasher movie as well, and you can you imagine not John Carpenter, Terminator. Why can't I think of it?
I can't remember.
James Cameron.
Oh, okay.
James Cameron saying like Michael Myers is like a robot. What if it is a robot?
Yeah.
Like you see how they make the jump from one to the other.
Yeah, it turns this into a sci-fi rather than a supernatural.
Yeah.
I love the first Terminator movie.
Yeah.
I love those practical effects. This movie definitely led to that. You want to talk about the performances?
Oh, of course. Can't wait.
I think Jamie Lee Curtis has to be called out, number one. She was probably the best one in the movie.
And this is, it's her first starring role in a movie. Obviously, she's said this herself and everyone has said it. She got the role because her mother is Janet Leigh from Psycho. And it's good advertising to have the daughter, of the daughter of the girl from the proto slasher movie is now the star of the new slasher horror movie. But like she said, I'm a nepo baby, but once I get there, it's my job to do the best I can, and she does great.
Yeah, you hear that a lot, especially in Hollywood nowadays, the nepo baby thing, and sometimes it's easy to begrudge some of these people their roles, but on the other hand, if a person is raised in a house of artists or a house of actors and they turn out to be good at it, it's no different than saying, yeah, my dad was in the NFL and so I too am a Division I college athlete.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a coincidence?
Yeah.
No, you have the genetics for this task and you have a role model and mentor that other people would kill for.
Yeah.
It's just, it happens.
And
connections matter,
and you have to bring the goods though. So
yeah, if she sucked, she would have been replaced.
Exactly. Both your parents are famous actors. Obviously that helps you out. But then if you just can't do the job, can't do the work, you're not going to keep working. It's or at least not star in movies. You might be in the background of movies, but you're not going to be starring in movies.
Yeah, I really thought this portrayal was authentic. It felt like an actual scared young lady, and I liked how she had tenacity and resourcefulness. I loved it when she pulls down the wire coat hanger and straightens it out and stabs him in the eye with it. I think that the character was not only well written in the dialogue and the direction, but I think that the performance really delivered.
Yeah, and I mean, you every time she drops the knife because she thinks she's done, and you're like, no, you've never seen one of these movies before. Stab him again. I was like, cut the heart out, take the head off.
Exactly.
You have to do something extreme, otherwise he keeps getting up. It's really interesting. Because you don't film movies in order very, very rarely. Anyway. So she had an intensity scale that she and John Carpenter worked out. And so it'd be like, she's like, based on where it is in the movie, because she's getting gradually more unhinged as the movie goes. And be like, okay, this one you're going to be at a 7 of intensity, and she could modulate her performance and get it to where it needed to be. So it's just, like having industry parents, she's a professional from the very start. She knows what she's there to do, and she does it.
Yeah, it was a great performance, and obviously it kicked off a really strong career.
So because I've been listening to interviews and stuff, don't ever bring your kids to see Jamie Lee Curtis at a convention or whatever and tell them that you showed your 5-year-old a movie like Halloween. She'll really
lecture you.
She will, she'll chew you out because she says people will come up at signings and they'll be like, "Oh, this is little Billy's favorite movie," and she's like, "You show your 5-year-old Halloween?" That's a great way to be on Jamie Lee Curtis's bad side.
Yes, I have no 5-year-old, and if I did, I wouldn't show them Halloween.
Yeah. It's not appropriate. Yeah. Next, Donald Pleasance is Dr. Samuel Loomis.
Yeah, he's just a great Van Helsing here.
Yeah.
It's such a perfect trope role in a horror movie. The wise guy who knows a lot, who cares. He's kind of like the hero.
Sort of. And he does shoot Michael at the end.
Yeah.
And no one, would know any of this stuff was going on if it wasn't for him and his like stalwart belief that he was going to go home and kill again.
Yeah, he was smart. He was tenacious. I loved it when he was standing behind the hedge and he like scared the kids off of the house.
He's like, "Get your ass away from there, Lonnie." And then he looks so proud of himself when the kids run off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Loomis,
he's a do-gooder.
When they're driving to the hospital at the beginning, like, he was rubbing me the wrong way at the start of it, but I'm totally in love with that character by the end of the movie. He wins me over.
Oh yeah, me too, for sure. I think Dr. Loomis is a paladin for sure.
Yeah. Famously, Donald Pleasance was a heavy drinker while they're making this movie. So they filmed like that first scene where you're introduced to him, he's 2 bottles of wine deep.
Nice.
In that, and that just lends to the sort of unhinged quality of his performance. I think that he's sauced up pretty good in a lot of these scenes.
Yeah, everyone was smoking and drinking through this whole movie. Like, I love it. Like, I can't remember her name, but she's like, "Where's my beer?"
Yeah.
"You don't have my beer?"
Yeah, that's PJ Souls as Linda Vanderklok.
Oh my God! They just like smoking and drinking and just never stopped. I guess the 70s were that way.
I love how they're smoking a joint while they're driving around, and it really feels like they're driving around like a 5-block area. Like,
just a little town.
Like nothing that needs a car to get you from A to B, but they're just driving for the hell of it.
They're cruising.
Yeah. But they pull up to Dad, the sheriff, and they've been smoking a joint, roll down the windows to talk to him, and he's just like, there's no way that car doesn't reek.
And her breath and the whole deal. There's no way he didn't smell that.
Yeah, except for if he just doesn't know what that smells like, because he's not a very good policeman.
Yeah, or he just doesn't care.
Yeah, could be either
70s. Reefer doesn't hurt anyone.
I don't think that there's any adults that care in this movie besides Loomis and the sheriff.
Yeah, they are the only adults in the room.
Yeah, because little Tommy, his parents go off to a swingers party or something and just leave all these teenage girls to watch their kids.
Yeah, what the hell? Like, who's leaving who's leaving everyone behind on Halloween night? Like, don't most parents plan to spend that night with their kids?
No, not in the 70s. They just go off to adult parties. It's a different time.
Oh yeah, my bad.
Yeah, it seems crazy now in the age of helicopter parents. But this is the age of latchkey kids. This is not the time of helicopter parents.
That's true.
And people are abandoning their kids and leaving them in the hands of horny teenage girls. And it's and chaos reigns because of it, because there's no supervision around.
Yeah, when you have a druid-infused madman in the town.
Right. Speaking of whom, Nick Castle as the Shape. We've got a couple other people that play Michael Myers. Tony Moran is the unmasked Michael Myers when Jamie Lee Curtis gets the mask off of him. And Will Sandin is the little baby boy Michael Myers at age 6.
Yeah, and supposedly John Carpenter also played the Shape in a few scenes. He's uncredited, but he appears a few times wearing the costume.
I believe it.
He's supposedly that's true.
And the hand that gets the knife in the opening prologue is Deborah Hill's hand. She's the hand of the little boy Michael.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So a lot of people play the Shape.
That's cool credit to say, like, I was the Shape. That'd be cool.
But I think Nick Castle has the most iconic Michael Myers moment, which is the head tilt after he stabs Bob.
Yeah.
where he stabs Bob into the wall and then just appraises his work and just tilts his head a little bit to the side. And it's so unsettling and weird and just beautiful. Like,
and Nick Castle goes to cons and stuff. You can get his autograph and pictures and all of that. That's pretty cool.
And John Carpenter would give him almost no direction other than walk from here to here. Stand there. Like, he didn't want him putting any sort of feeling or thought into the things he was doing. He wanted them to be just direct and mechanical and mindless, sort of.
Nice.
Yeah.
He's kind of like a Frankenstein in that way. He's just like kind of blocky and clunky.
Just a big, tall, 21-year-old killing machine.
Yeah, he's just a beefy dude.
Yeah. Who you got next?
Kyle Richards as Lindsay Wallace. I just thought that this was probably the friend that was the most, most relatable. She seemed...
Well, Lindsay's the little girl.
Oh, was it? Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She's Laurie's young friend. Yeah, she's there, and with the boy. I think that this character is... she kind of takes the fear that the little boy evokes and just kind of magnifies it with her presence. I don't know what's worse than having a little kid around when there's a killer, but having two little kids
does make it worse.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a pretty good one, but ultimately, I mean, I'm sure that there's tons more on your list. I really feel like this was kind of like a very sparse cast.
Yeah.
Like, there's really only a few people that mattered.
Yeah. So, like you said, Kyle Richards is Lindsay Wallace. The most notable thing about her is she's the Real Housewife of Beverly Hills.
Oh, is she?
Which I've never seen that show, but it's quite popular, I think.
I've never seen any of those.
Nancy Keys is who played Annie Brackett, who is the one you were talking about.
Yeah. The more relatable one.
You found her relatable? I don't love Nancy. She's not. I prefer PJ Souls as Linda. Yeah, I like Linda more than Nancy.
Well, so I think Linda is like your believable kind of douchey friend.
Yeah, she's the one. She's not babysitting. These other two are stuck babysitting.
Yeah,
and she's bringing her boyfriend Bob over to drink beers and bang in the house of the family that your friend is babysitting for.
Yeah, that's
it's fairly unscrupulous. It's pretty. Maybe she doesn't deserve to die, but it's not good behavior.
She can die.
Yeah, it's the 70s. Everyone was immoral and terrible, and they're unsupervised kids. There's no adults.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. I do have more people, but I think probably the only one that really needs to get mentioned is Charles Cyphers as the sheriff.
Yeah. I mean, he seems like, I think that the sheriff in Stranger Things is just a direct lift of this character.
Oh yeah, that's fair. That's probably very accurate. And he listens to Loomis when, generally your small town sheriff in these movies doesn't listen.
Yeah, he's like, I'll stay here all night, but wasting my time.
Yeah, it's like basically, I am not gonna go home and clock out if there's any chance there's a madman murdering around my town. And his daughter gets killed, so that's a bummer. They don't manage to actually stop any murders except for Laurie. But he does listen to the Van Helsing when he comes to tell him there's a monster man in the town.
Yeah, I think it's I don't know. It's a good role. I think he did it well.
Yeah. He seems like a copy, kind of. It's the mustache really sells it. Mm-hmm. He just seems like that guy, the small town sheriff guy.
Yeah.
You know who else he is? He's the dad, Bella's dad in Twilight. Is this same guy? Yeah, same character.
It's an archetype. It's like rustic dad.
Mm-hmm. It's totally. Well, we're ripping through this.
Yeah, for sure.
The wrap up. What's your personal highlight?
This is a tough one because I was really thinking about this. Where do I draw the line? What do I like? it's just like I kind of feel like this whole movie is just like one. It's almost like a running scene. But so I'm just gonna say I love the kind of the final climax chase where specifically when Laurie finds the bodies that have all been hidden.
That's where you started at, yeah.
And I feel like the ensuing stuff after that just leads up to like a fever pitch. It's just a great spot, and I love the tombstone and the bed and all of that.
He's very theatrical, Michael. He's an unthinking robot in every way except for how you present dead bodies, because then he goes the extra mile and really lays them out, hangs them up, and does interesting stuff with them. He's
an
artist.
He truly is. So yeah, I had a hard time finding a personal highlight here, and it's kind of lame to say the climax of the movie, but it really was the best part of the movie.
It is.
So what about you? What's your personal highlight?
Samesies. Yeah. Okay. I basically, it's the last 30 minutes, which is a long stretch, but from the point where he kills Bob up until the final shot of, his body missing and credits roll, like that's when the movie gets cooking.
Yeah.
Like it has been moody and slow, and there has been some action here and there, but up until this point, it's just been more vibes than it has been action.
Yeah.
But that last 20 minutes, this movie just cruises, and it's edge of your seat through that whole thing. You're you're just rooting for Laurie to get away the whole time.
Yeah, for sure.
And you'd start doing the thing where you're talking to the screen. You're like, don't go in the closet. That's not going to stop him. You're like, don't drop the knife. Like it.
Yeah.
You see all the mistakes that she's making, and you don't want her to do them. Like you want her to get out of this thing. You've invested in this girl over the course of the movie.
Yeah, she's relatable.
Yeah, and seeing her in peril, and even when she's in peril, she's trying to protect the kids.
Yeah.
She never loses sight of that job, and that just makes her like, it makes you invest in her even more, because she's noble, it's not just because you want this young girl to survive, but she's like got a good head on her shoulders and tries to do the right moral thing too. So yeah, that last 20 minutes of this movie just rips. It's so good.
Yeah, it really is great.
Yeah. Well, what worked for you?
I think that there was a lot of small things, but I'll just narrow it down.
Okay.
Just first, the mood and vibes, just overall, just that's one data point. The whole thing was just moody, and it felt somber. It felt like Halloween, and they worked their movie magic. And then the other thing was the music. I just gotta say that John Carpenter's score, it makes this movie. Like when I was when I started the movie up and I was watching it, and I was like, oh, this music, like I've never seen this movie and I know this music.
Yeah,
this is, I mean, the word iconic is overused, but it really is. It's a symbol. Like the music is amazing.
You've heard that music every time you go into the Spirit Halloween store or a haunted house. You've heard the Halloween music over and over through your whole life.
Yeah, it's awesome. So how about you? What worked for you?
Real similar stuff. First up, I have the music. Second, this goes under what you said about the vibes. It's the tension building and the payoff. Like the movie builds anxiety and angst in you, and then you have small catharsis of violence here and there, and then at the end, it's just this sprint through the final 20 minutes of the movie. And so just the way Carpenter composes the action of the movie and the rhythm of the movie the same way he composes music. You know what I mean? Like he takes you on a mood journey through this whole movie, where he calms you down and brings you back up, and then calms you back down again. And it's just, that's why it's called Master of Horror. Like he's one of the best people to do this. And then finally, Michael Myers himself, the boogeyman.
Okay.
Iconic movie monster. Like he's earned a place in the sort of this pantheon of like the big horror icons. Michael Myers is one of the main ones.
Yeah.
And it's just such a simple thing, that the white Shatner mask and the coveralls and a kitchen knife. That's it. You'd know exactly who that is when you.
It's a pretty easy costume too.
Oh yeah, and you just need what they call him, the shape, because you really don't even need to see any details. That silhouette, as simple as it is completely iconic. Mm-hmm. Like you could pick his silhouette out of a lineup easily.
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay, so what didn't work for you?
So I mean, the first half of the movie, it took a long time to get going.
Okay.
It was very slice of life. I don't watch slice of life shows because I find them boring. Like I don't like those. There's the whole genre of anime and sitcoms and stuff. That's all this. I just don't watch it because I don't like it. It's boring. It's slow. I felt like it did eventually start picking up. It was like a slow motion avalanche. Like the first half of the movie, it's just like some pebbles and then slightly larger rocks. And then finally it's moving and it's unstoppable momentum.
Well, it's fully 2/3 of the movie before you get, because it's a 90-minute approximately film, and it's the last half hour is action.
And then the other thing that I would say is, I kind of praised it earlier, is it's just dead simple. It's got a complete lack of plot. And I guess that works for slasher movies. I obviously, I'm not a connoisseur of slasher movies. I tend to like things a little more in depth, a little more nuance, a little more story. The contrived reasons why the kids were alone here and there and this and that, it's all a little thin. Yeah. And I didn't find myself caring about almost any of the characters except Laurie. Okay. And so I guess me caring that she survived was the point. Yeah. Everybody else, I was like, oh no, bitchy girl died. Yeah. Okay. Moving on.
Unmoved. Yeah.
It's like, damn, Bob seemed like he would have been a cool guy to hang with.
Well, the one thing about Bob, and I'll say this about Michael's sister at the beginning of, or sister's boyfriend at the beginning of the movie too. Even for teen boys, their sexual performance is pretty awful. Like,
yeah, leg humping, basically.
Basically, like Michael's sister and that boy go upstairs, and it is 1 minute later that he is putting on his shirt and leaving. And it's similar timeline for Bob and Linda. They go upstairs and they're not at it for very long before Bob is rolling over and going to go get beers.
There you go. I guess, they just did what they needed to do. Yeah. So yeah, I just thought that it was the lack of plot and the fact that it was a very slow burn. Okay. How about you? What didn't work for you?
So the movie, I've spent a lot of time analyzing where I sort of lost interest for a while in the movie before it kicks back into gear. And it's in the whole Annie washing her clothes subplot, right? Where she gets some butter on her shirt.
They're trying to figure out a reason to have
her clothes off.
A girl to be just there in an oversized shirt.
Yeah, so she gets stuck in a window with her butt in the air and her panties. And it's cute. I understand all that, but it just lost me during that whole thing. And it's taken a lot of analysis of the movie to be like, where did I get bored with this movie? Because the beginning of the movie is so tense, and I love him, all the glimpses we get of the shape as he's stalking them. I thought that was really good. And then, like we said, the last half hour is incredibly
It has
paced.
A squishy middle.
It has this really squishy middle where I was just like kind of tuning out, like on this whole, like, it's such an expedition for her to go to the shed to do the laundry and get locked in the shed. And it was just like, I don't need any of this. This is none of this works for me. Out of all the actors in the movie, I think she has the weakest performance. It's the most hammy sort of.
Yeah.
sort of horror movie performance out of anyone in the movie, and it just loses me. That, and then I already mentioned the vocal mix. I think the voices are just too hard to hear in the mix, and those are my only criticisms.
All right, so what's your final thought? What do you rate this bad boy?
I wasn't sure what to rate it when I got done with it, because I did get bored, but then by the end of it, I was like so on the hook with it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, let's go to my favorite critics and see what other people think. And literally all of my go-tos, 5-star, masterpiece, perfect film. And I go, ooh, that's not exactly what I thought. Like that was not the feeling I had. And so, spending a week like deep diving this movie and learning about it and everything, I'm coming in at a 4. I can't get up there to a 5. Even, I think John Carpenter has better movies than this. Okay. And so, if The Thing is a 5, which I think it probably is, Halloween is a 4.
Interesting.
So what about you? What did you think?
I also had mixed feelings. I was like thinking, man, there were parts where I just picked up my phone. Yeah. And it was during that squishy middle. Yeah. And then I thought to myself, oh man, but it's like this is a seminal movie in the genre, and everything else has copied it. It's so imitated. Yeah. And these performances and the iconography of Michael Myers and the whole deal, and everywhere online says that it's a 5-star movie, or at least a 90% on Tomato and all that. And so I'm like, man, so I could not find myself giving it a 5 because I did not think it was a perfect movie.
When it's a 5, you know it.
Yeah.
That's the...
And I thought about a 3 as well because I got a little bored, but then I was like, no, it is better than that. This is a great movie that I think anyone could enjoy. Any adult.
No 5-year-old.
There's too many boobs and murders for a kid.
How many murders are there? What? Just 3 or 4.
That's too many. That's about 3 or 4 too many for a little kid.
For a little kid?
Yeah.
So more people should have probably thought that around my house.
So yeah, I settled on a 4 as well, and I was willing to be convinced through the course of this dialogue that it was a 5 if you had compelling reasoning. Yeah. But I legitimately have 4 typed down here, and I think that that's kind of where I sit. There are real moments of greatness in this movie. Oh yeah. And then there are also some yawns.
I do think the yawns are intentional for you to get a little complacent because you had been feeling so anxious, and it's done to just like give you that sort of nothing's really happening anymore, and to just sort of let your guard down. Yeah. And it works because when the killing starts again, you are off guard.
Absolutely.
But I just a little too much Annie cleaning her clothes.
Yeah, just some boring stuff. All right, so I guess let's take a break and we'll come back to the Vault of Darkness.
Before we delve into the Vault of Darkness, we ask that all initiates of the cult follow us on your favorite social media platforms at Nightshade Cult.
If you've enjoyed this content, help us grow the cult by sharing it with like-minded people and leave a review wherever you listen.
Do you have any dark tidings?
Just small one. The Cure released another song off of the new album. The song's called...
The first song was good. I haven't listened to it.
Yeah, the next one is called A Fragile Thing. And the album is going to be called Songs of a Lost World. And they released a track list as well, but... There's no use in reading a track list here. But yeah, I actually think the second song is better than the first song. Ooh. I liked it more.
I like that because the first one was very like you said, faithy and like of that style. So
yeah, this one really kind of evokes that too, but it's not as slow of a burn.
Okay. So, yeah, because it is 3 minutes in before
3 minutes of intro
before the vocals come in.
Yeah, we get a little more Robert a little earlier on, and so check that out. It's everywhere. They're The Cure.
Yeah. It's on wherever you stream music, it's there.
And everywhere you don't. It's like, it's on Instagram, it's on Facebook, it's everywhere. Yeah. All right. So, what are you pulling out of the vault?
Well, hold on. I had a dark tiding.
Oh, snap. What do you got?
Because I think you brought up a circus event once upon a time. And you put it as a dark tiding, right? And not So I went to an event yesterday. Okay. Cultist Dana, it's her birthday today that we're recording this.
Happy birthday.
And we went out yesterday to Killer Burlesque, which is a horror-themed burlesque show.
I saw an advertisement for that.
Yeah, and it's ongoing through, going all the way to October 27th, so I figured it will still be happening during the time people are listening to this podcast, and so it's worth mentioning. If you're here in the Portland area, it's at the Portland, Alberta Abbey on Alberta Street. You have to be 18 or older, and tickets start at $37. But it's like a burlesque show. Michael Myers features heavily in it, as do all the other sort of slasher icons.
Perfect.
And other horror characters like Pennywise and Chucky and stuff like that.
I like that. I think burlesque is cool, but I like it better when it's spooky and less when it's trying to be funny.
Yeah, well, it's always funny. It's based in vaudeville sort of stuff. So yeah, it's humorous and spooky, and there's like 7. It's the same troupe that does The Empire Strikes Back, which is the Star Wars themed burlesque show that tours all around. And this is their first run doing Killer Burlesque. They've made their careers on doing Star Wars themed strip teasing, and they thought, we'll come to Portland and we'll work on this horror one, and maybe this is a thing we'll start doing in the spooky season.
Oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah, so we're getting the first run of it, and it's going to be going on until the 27th. So if you're in the area, or when they, if they bring it back down to LA where I believe they're based at, if you're down there, you can check them out down there.
Nice.
Okay. Vault of Darkness. What do you got?
Oh, okay. I have a new album that I want to talk about.
Oh, nice.
This is from a new band. So this is their debut album, and it just came out at the very end of September. And the band is called High Parasite. And the album is called Forever We Burn. And instantly when I listened to it, I was immediately like, oh wow, this sounds extremely familiar.
Yeah.
And that's because the singer for this band is none other than Aaron Stainthorpe of My Dying Bride.
Oh, okay.
And so, but it has an entirely different band. He says this isn't a side project or a solo album. This is a new band that he has joined.
Okay.
The main songwriter is a guy who goes by the moniker Tombs.
Okay.
And he's notably of a band called Night Shadow's Lament, which is like a neoclassical industrial doom band. And this band, High Parasite, which High Parasite is sort of a reference to human beings.
Gotcha.
Is they pretentiously call themselves death pop, but I don't think of them as death pop when I listen to them, because so it's sort of like if you listen to Him, the Finnish goth rockers, but you add more melodic sounds and far more gritty vocals, not just clean singing, of which there is plenty of clean singing in this, but there's also some snarling and some occasional growling, but it's not death metal. It's more like melodic goth metal with some very, very wide ranging vocal styles. It really evokes like a gothic metal vibe, but instead of having like heavy parts, it adds actually more like a rock and roll vibe.
Okay.
And so it's very listenable. The drums are really what lend that rock and roll vibe. And so, yeah, if you're like a fan of Him or anything in that milieu, you would like High Parasite. I call it gothic metal. They call themselves death pop, but it's in that spooky, heavy, poppy-ish vein. I think a lot of people would like it. Yeah. It doesn't break a ton of new ground.
Yeah.
But it's a notable entry into that like micro genre.
Okay, that sounds pretty cool, actually. And I like the name, High Parasite.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And they have one album. It's a full length, and the whole thing is good.
Okay, and it just came out. So
Yeah.
So no one has heard it yet.
Yeah, it should be new.
Basically.
I mean, it's been out for like 2 weeks.
Okay.
What do you got from the vault?
I've got two things, and I'm going to brush over the first one because a kind of a more relevant or a better thing came along.
Okay.
Because when I think of Halloween and movies of this era, it always puts me in mind of the Meteors, the psychobilly band.
Okay, yeah.
They have a song from their second album, Stampede, called Michael Myers. That's about this movie. And the Meteors, if you don't know, are like the original psychobilly band.
Yeah. Proper big hair.
In their own words, only the Meteors are pure psychobilly. Everyone else is derivative of them.
Okay.
And maybe had big hair once upon a time. P. Paul Fennick is very bald at this point.
Oh, okay.
Because they've been around since the late 70s.
Yeah, yeah.
The hair didn't stick around for him. But yeah, they basically, just like this movie is to slasher movies, they are to psychobilly music, which is like horror-themed rockabilly music with a little surf, a little punk.
A little punky, yeah.
Yeah, just a little rough. And so I was all set to kind of go in on that. A band from the early 80s that probably you already know about if you're listening to
Yeah, all the cultists know who know what psychobilly is.
Yeah, exactly. So I saw a movie yesterday that I had not seen before. Came out in 2018.
Oh, okay.
Called Mandy, starring Nicolas Cage. And it's slasher adjacent for sure. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna breeze over the Meteors and get into talking about Mandy, because Mandy is bonkers, like just crazy.
I mean, that's
crazy
kind
music.
of Nick Cage's thing.
Yeah.
Is bonkers movies.
You've probably seen gifs from Mandy of like Nick Cage just completely covered in blood, looking deranged, maybe holding a battle axe or something of that nature. So I finally saw this movie. They call it a action horror dark fantasy. I call it a psychedelic. It's a reverse slasher movie, right? Where the victim becomes the Michael Myers of the thing.
Okay. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's, essentially like the real quick elevator pitch is Nick Cage gets high on cocaine and LSD and kills the Manson family. He's a logger in the 1980s, and the creepy cult hippie people roll into town, and they torture him and his wife, and the wife gets killed, and he goes on a blood-soaked psychedelic revenge spree.
Nice.
And it is just a crazy kind of. There's cosmic horror elements to it. There's animated components to it.
Wow.
It's very Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hills Have Eyes, Near Dark. You see a lot of influences of other horror movies, and it is intense, gruesomely violent, really cool music. Cultist James says it's like a doom metal album of a movie.
Okay.
And it's, I think if the slasher genre appeals to you, and revenge-o-matic movies from the 70s and 80s, if that sort of thing appeals to you, this movie's got all of that. It is, trigger warning, it is the opposite of Halloween, where the violence happens off screen. It's very on screen in this movie. The chainsaw violence is very detailed, and the battle axe gets a lot of use, and other implements. It's gnarly. It's super gnarly, very blood-soaked, but good, very good.
Okay.
So yeah, Mandy, 2018. I think it's, everything's on Amazon. If nowhere else, you can pay your $3 to watch it on Amazon.
Yeah, it's easy to find things everywhere at this point.
Yeah.
Well, we'd like to thank you for joining the Nightshade Cult.
Until we meet again, we're wishing you unpleasant dreams.